My name is Tina Beaird. I'm the owner of Tamarack Genealogy. There are a number of collections that exist for the First World War. The problem with the First World War is that they're not all put in the same location. And the collections themselves aren't advertised, and a lot of times people just don't know enough about the collections to be able to promote them successfully. And with the anniversary of the war coming up quickly, April 15th, 2017 is the start of the US entry into the war, there's slowly starting to be some interest. It's a little too slow for my liking, but some places in and around Illinois where you can find information about your First World War ancestor is start at the county level. So when a soldier's returning home from the front, he's contacting his local recorder of deeds office or his local county clerk, and he's filing a copy of his discharge papers. Now, in the state of Illinois, you need to be a next of kin in order to access these. So it becomes a little complicated to get your hands on them. But sometimes you can contact the recorder's office in your county, see if you can come down and look through the index and find your soldier, and then petition in order to get a copy. That's going to have all the information about the soldier, what unit he was in, where he served, his height, his weight, his eye color, if he was awarded in a medal, if he was injured, or if he was gassed during the war. All of that is right there on that discharge paper. The state of Illinois has the bonuses that were paid to soldiers after the war. So if they came home, or even if they were killed in action and one of their widow or their family applied for that bonus, they would have those at the archives in Springfield. Now the downside to these records is there was a fire in the armory in 1936. So when they pull out the files for you, only about 20% survived. And when you get them, you still have the charred edges around them. They tried to cut off as much of the damage as they could, so sometimes you just get little discs with, maybe the name and a little bit of information about the soldier, but at least you know that they received their bounty and that there is a record of them having served. If you're moving up the food chain to the national level, the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis would be the place where you would go for World War I personnel files. Now again, there was a fire at the National Archives in the 1970s, and 80 million records were destroyed for the First World War and the Second World War. So they might only give you a file with 3 pages. Their final payment vouchers, if they had ever served in the hospital or were stationed and then injured and put in a hospital, or it would have just the index card that showed their name and their rank, and there's no additional information. There are other ways to ferret out some history about whether or not they served. So in Kansas City, if they were actually killed in action during the First World War, the burial card files are at the National Archives in Kansas City. If they served through a camp, and if you know the camp, then you can locate the camp records. Those are Record Group 93, and those are at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. So if they were stationed at Camp Logan or at Camp Grant, or if they were at, Camp Funston, those records are in Washington, D.C., and you can go through those records. The National Archives, too, in College Park actually has a lot of collections of the individual units. So a unit summary, if they were in the 313th Engineers, if they were in the 45th CAC, they have those records, and it's the bulk of the collection, and it's Record Group 121, and it's under AEF, which is the American Expeditionary Forces. And then you can search by units and by divisions through the National Archives and try to recreate that war experience. Probably the biggest hurdle that I've experienced is the fact that people don't know what they have. So I went to the National Archives in Kansas City. We don't have World War I records. I went to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. We don't have World War I records. Yes, they do. You have to kind of know what you're looking for in order to get the information out of them. So a lot of it is just ignorance, and I hate to say that because the archives is an extremely valuable source, but when you have millions and millions of pages of documents, you don't always know one particular record group from another to be able to access that information. A lot of times the soldiers didn't talk about it, and there's not a lot of paperwork in the 20th century to give you the information you need, the unit that they were stationed at, the camp that they might have been in. So without those specific pieces of data, it becomes really, really hard to begin that search. So starting locally actually benefits you, because if you can contact the county and get a copy of the discharge, then you have the unit and you have the dates to then start going and doing that deeper research through the National Archives or through the Illinois State Archives.